There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from working too hard, but from being too available, too emotionally available, too mentally reachable, too energetically open. You're the one who always answers the call, the one who replies immediately, the one who listens, holds space, shows up, no matter what it costs you. You keep being the helper, the rock, the one who understands. And at first, that seems noble. But over time, something strange begins to happen. People stop seeing you. They stop valuing your time. They expect your yes. They take your presence for granted. And inside, you feel it. A quiet resentment, a slow burning fatigue, a sense that you've given so much of yourself. There's almost nothing left. This is not a personality flaw. This is a pattern, and it's one you're allowed to change. Let's tell the truth. Being constantly available isn't a sign of love. It's often a sign of fear. Fear of being left out. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of being called selfish. Fear of what would happen if you stopped playing the role you've always played. You say yes because you want to be kind. But deep down, your availability is a kind of contract. If I'm always here for you, maybe I'll finally be chosen. If I never disappoint you, maybe you'll stay. If I meet everyone's needs, maybe I'll matter. And so, you train people to expect you everywhere, all the time. But here's the truth. The more you're always available, the less people see your presence as a gift. They see it as a given. And once that happens, you stop being a person. You become a resource. Carl Jung didn't just explore shadow and symbolism. He also spoke about psychic energy, the limited vital force of your internal life. He believed that your attention, emotional capacity, and awareness are like currency. And when you spend that energy unconsciously, on people, on problems, on emotional performance, you drain your vitality. A person will worship something. Have no doubt about that, Jung wrote. Whatever one places at the center of their life will take hold of their energy. If you place others at the center of your life, if you allow their needs to dictate your availability, then slowly you begin to orbit around a reality that isn't yours. And you wonder why you feel lost, why you're tired, why you feel invisible even when everyone seems to need you. Because you've been living outside yourself. And that disconnection, it's not burnout. It's a wake-up call. You might think your constant presence makes you strong, but Jung would call it a persona, a mask you've created to survive. It's the mask of the loyal friend, the reliable daughter, the peacemaker, the spiritual one who never says no, the understanding partner. These roles don't make you bad, they make you safe. Because the moment you take them off, people might leave, people might get upset, people might stop liking you. So instead, you keep performing availability, even as it chips away at your inner life. But here's the cost. You start saying yes before you even ask yourself if you want to. You ignore the part of you that's tired or unsure or just not interested. And over time, that voice, the real you, gets quieter. Until one day you realize you're surrounded by people, but no one knows you. Because you never gave them the chance to meet the version of you who knows how to say no. Let's name the fear. If I stop being available, will they still love me? Will they think I've changed? Will I lose everything I've worked to keep? And the answer is, maybe. You might lose some people. You might disappoint expectations you never agreed to in the first place. But you'll gain something else, yourself. Because the you that always responds, always explains, always shows up, even when it hurts, that you is a performance, and no performance lasts forever. At some point, the audience leaves, the lights go down, and you're left backstage wondering who you really are when you're not giving something away. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Sometimes, the most absurd thing we do is keep showing up for everyone else so we don't have to face how deeply we've abandoned ourselves. Here's what happens when you stop being available. The people who were attached to your performance, not your presence, start to fall away. Not because you did something wrong, but because they were never truly with you. They were with your role, your utility, your emotional labor. When that disappears, they panic, they push, they guilt, they accuse. You've changed. You're distant. You don't care like you used to. But what they're really saying is, I can't use you the way I used to. And that's not love. That's attachment to the version of you that never said no. There's a power in absence that no amount of overgiving can match. When you become unavailable, people begin to see your presence as a choice, not an obligation. You reclaim your energy, and with it, your discernment. You stop being predictable, and when you're not predictable, you're not controllable. Jung understood this deeply. He saw the withdrawal of psychic energy not as passivity, but as individuation. Individuation, he wrote, means becoming a single, homogeneous being, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. To do that, you must stop letting others write your identity for you, and you must stop offering yourself to relationships that only survive because you're constantly feeding them. There's a voice in your head that says, "But won't they think I'm selfish? Isn't this cold? What if they need me?" Here's the reframe. Emotional withdrawal is not cruelty. It's clarity. You're not punishing them. You're prioritizing truth over performance. Because if someone only values you when you overextend, when you self-abandon, when you're available to them more than to yourself, that's not love. That's dependency. Your withdrawal may frustrate others, but it also forces them to meet themselves. And not everyone is ready for that. But that's not your responsibility. Not everyone will fall away when you become less available. The ones who are capable of real connection will adjust. They'll feel the shift. They may ask questions. They may feel insecure for a moment, but they won't punish you for evolving. Instead, they'll do something different. They'll meet you where you are. They'll give you space without guilt. They'll respect your time without entitlement. They'll stop taking your emotional labor for granted. Because real intimacy doesn't require overexposure. It grows in the space where both people remain sovereign and still choose each other freely. You've been taught that being loving means being open, available, reachable, constant. But that belief has a shadow. You forget that your time, your energy, your presence are finite. And anything finite is precious. What if your energy is not something to be distributed equally, but something to be directed intentionally? What if being hard to reach isn't a defense mechanism, but a spiritual boundary? Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." To look inside, you must withdraw from everything that constantly pulls you outward. Because if you are always available to everyone, you will never be available to yourself. You've spent years responding to the world, to the people who needed you, to the roles you were handed, to the situations that demanded a version of you. before you even had time to ask who you actually are. But the moment you become less available, you begin to hear something that was buried beneath all that noise. Your own voice. It starts as discomfort. The silence feels strange. The lack of messages. The stillness of your phone. The space no one is rushing in to fill. But then, that stillness starts to feel sacred. You realize you don't actually miss being needed. You miss being whole. And wholeness can't survive when you're endlessly leaking your life into people who never asked how you were really doing. When you're constantly tuned into everyone else, you lose track of your own signals. Your gut feelings become fuzzy. Your emotions get muted. You second-guess what you feel because you're too busy feeling what everyone else feels. This is the energetic cost of over-availability. You become an antenna for other people's stories while your own story slips out of view. Carl Jung saw this as a kind of soul loss. When you abandon your own center to revolve around others, you become disembodied from your true self. You don't know what you want. You don't know what to say yes or no to, because you're not listening to you. Reclaiming your availability isn't just about setting boundaries, it's about resetting your intuition. The quiet wisdom inside you can only speak when the external volume has been turned down. This is hard to hear, but it will set you free. Every time you answer when you're tired, every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you show up when you're unraveling inside, you're teaching them that this is who you are. And they'll believe you, because you've made it your job to never make them uncomfortable. But what if the real discomfort is living a life where your truth never gets to speak? When you stop being constantly available, you're no longer training people to expect access without presence. You're showing them, I'm not here to be consumed. I'm not here to soothe your avoidance. I'm not available on demand. I'm available by choice. This is how self-respect begins, not with a speech, but with a withdrawal. There's a trap in the personal growth space, believing that to be spiritual is to be infinitely open. But openness without discernment isn't compassion. It's codependency with better branding. Jung wrote, "Compassion is not weakness, and concern for the unfortunate is not socialism. It is humanity, and humanity requires boundaries." You can care deeply without collapsing into every crisis. You can be kind without being constantly reachable. You can love and still say, "Not today." True availability isn't about access. It's about authenticity. If your yes comes from guilt, it's not love. If your presence comes from fear, it's not connection. Here's something unexpected that happens when you stop being constantly available. You become magnetic, not because you're playing games, but because your presence is no longer a performance. It's a choice, and people feel that. When you stop giving everything away, your energy becomes concentrated, focused, rooted. You walk differently, speak less, listen more, and the world notices, even if they can't name why. Because mystery is born in withdrawal, and mystery is magnetic. There's a difference between being alone and being with yourself. When you stop being available to everyone else, you don't become lonely. You become present. You start to notice the parts of you you've ignored for years. The voice that wants stillness instead of stimulation. The body that's been exhausted for a decade. The desire for silence. Not because you're withdrawing in pain, but because you're finally at peace. At some point you must ask, what am I giving my energy to, and why? Because not everyone deserves your time. Not every request deserves a response. Not every crisis is your calling. Your energy is a currency, and you've spent it recklessly on things that didn't feed you. Conversations you didn't want to be in, emotions that weren't yours to hold, roles that made you useful but not seen. Now, you take it back, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You are no longer available for the version of life that demanded your silence in exchange for belonging. You are no longer available for a world that only loved the persona. When you become less available, something profound happens. The wrong people fade, the wrong patterns dissolve, the urgency disappears, and in that space, new people arrive. But they come quietly. They don't demand. They don't feed on your openness. They don't ask you to be anything other than exactly what you are. They are drawn to your center, not your service. And that's how you'll know. You're no longer being chosen for what you offer. You're being seen for who you've become. Let's call it what it really is. Withdrawing isn't avoidance. It's a spiritual practice. It's choosing self-connection over social performance. It's tending to your inner world like a sacred garden. It's letting go of urgency and remembering that your worth doesn't live in being wanted. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires separation from the collective. To become conscious of it, the self, he wrote, a person must withdraw from the unconscious attitudes of the herd. And that's what you're doing now. You're stepping away, not to disappear, but to become undeniably real. If this message found you at the right moment, it's because something inside you is already shifting. You've spent enough years being available for everyone but yourself. Now, you choose peace over performance, solitude over overstimulation, presence over people-pleasing, stillness over overextension. You're no longer trying to be everything to everyone, because finally, you're becoming everything to yourself. If this message resonated with you, if you're stepping back to step deeper into your truth, leave a comment. What are you no longer available for? What part of yourself are you finally ready to reclaim? If you're walking the path of individuation, presence, and spiritual clarity, subscribe. We're building a life that's rooted, not rushed, real, not reactive, sacred, not performative. Until next time, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.